warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Putri Nurkamaliah. I want to present about my Intro to Literature final test assignment. There will be 3 points or 3 numbers here that I will answer. The first is about poetry. I have a short biography about Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson, often abbreviated as Emily Dickinson, born December 30, 1830, died May 15, 1886 at the age of 55, was the United States poet. He was famous for his poem Is the Past, almost 1,800 poems that have been written prominently to this day. He is from the state of Massachusetts. He was famous for his poetry, which was full of touch words and was unique. He spent most of his life at home. Emily loves flowers and uses them to show her feeling in her poetry. And one of his poems is entitled Hope, where it has a meaning that hope can be both a wonderful light in the darkness, a thing with feathers, as a say in her other poem, but it changes nothing. The hope for something is not to have that thing to those imprisoned or unsolved. Hope can allow them to live through the darkness hour, but it does not change the fact that they are still imprisoned. Hope can allow people to abstain for having the thing they want, from getting the object of their desire, from changing their circumstance. A person can still have hope. Things will change without doing anything to make it happen, thus feeding upon itself. Okay, the second one I have here is about prose. Here I will tell a biography again, but from Charles Dickens. Charles John Hupham Dickens, born in Landorp, February 7, 1812, died on the Gathill, England, 9 of June, 1870, at 58 years of age. Was an English writer of romance or a great novel from Queen Victoria of Great Britain. Okay, the second point about prose I have here is the summary of Oliver Twist's novel. Oliver Twist is born in a workhouse and later turns 9 years old. He then works at a workhouse and escapes to London, where he meets many people who are willing to give him shelter. The first one is Mr. Sowerberry. The second is an old Jew. Then he stays with Mr. Brownlow and learns he has a half-brother named Monks. The old Jew had told him to steal, and he did just that. And the person Oliver stole from was Mr. Brownlow, who took him in any way, but the Jew wanted Oliver back, so he sends his friend Sykes to get him, and he is found. Eventually, he gets back to Mr. Brownlow, but then moves somewhere else with Mr. Maylie and Rose. By the end, Mr. Brownlow had adopted Oliver even through all their obstacles. And the last point from prose I have here about The character and characteristic of Oliver Twist's novel. The first one is Oliver Twist. He's an orphan child whose mother died, and at his birth, father is dead when Oliver's paternity is revealed. The second character is Mr. Bumble. Mr. Bumble, a beadle in the Paris workhouse where Oliver was born. The third is Mrs. Mann. She is the superintendent where the infant Oliver is placed until age 9, who is not capable of caring for the culprit, as she is self-centered and greedy. The fourth is Mr. Sowerberry. He's an undertaker who took as apprentice. The fifth is Mrs. Sowerberry, is Mr. Sowerberry's wife. The sixth is Noah, a cowardly bully, Sowerberry's apprentice. The seventh is Charlotte, the Sowerberry maid, lover of Noah. The eighth, there is Mr. Gamefield. He is a chimney sweep in the town where Oliver was born. The ninth, Mr. Brownlow, a kindly gentleman who takes Oliver in, his first benefactor. The tenth, there is Mr. Grimwig. He is a friend of Mr. Brownlow. The 11th, Mr. Bedwin. Mr. Bedwin is Mr. Brownlow's housekeeper. And the 12th, Rose Maylie. She is Oliver's second benefactor, later found to his own. There is the 13th here, Mrs. Lindsay Maylie. She is Harry Maylie's mother, Rose Maylie's adoptive aunt. And the 14th is Harry Maylie. Harry Maylie is Mrs. Maylie's son. The 15th is Mr. Losberne. Mr. Losberne is Mrs. Maylie's family doctor. And the 16th is Mr. Giles, Mr. Maylie's butler. And the 17th, there is Mr. Breathless. Mr. Breathless is Mrs. Maylie's handyman. And the 18th, there is Dove and Blathers. They are two incompetent policemen. The last there is Fagin. Fagin is fence and boss of a criminal gang of young boys and girls. Actually, there is so many character and characteristic here, but there is 35 actually, but I can't show you up about the character. Okay, thank you. That's all about prose. Next to the other point is about drama. Okay, the last point is about drama. Here I have a summary from the drama Sorry Wrong Number. Sorry Wrong Number tells the story of Mr. or Mrs. Albert Stevenson. Horrified by what she hears, Mrs. Stevenson calls the operator of demand that she trusts the source of this call. The operator explains that only the police can push through a request like that. And so begins 20 minutes of calls to the police, telephone operators, and even to the phone company chief operator as Mrs. Stevenson attempts to alert someone to the gravity of the situation. None of the people she talks to will acknowledge that she is in any danger, Meanwhile, the audience learns that Mrs. Stevenson has been confined to her bed for 12 years with anxiety issues. No one on the pond has the answer she's seeking, and her anxiety mounts, building suspense that her health may be at risk. The drama culminates in a scene where Mrs. Stevenson becomes certain that she is the target of the murder. After all, she lives near a train that crosses a bridge, and when she hears that her husband has left town on business, she knows that she will be at home alone at the designated time for the attack. In the final minutes, she hears an intruder listening on the downstairs phone, and then she picks out footsteps coming up the stairs, and she hastily calls the police for help. And just before they answer the phone, her terrified screams let the audience know that she has been caught by the killer. The drama ends when the police ask about the nature of the caller emergency. The killer picks up the phone, explains that he's fine, and says that he never meant to dial the police. He apologizes for dialing a wrong number and hangs up. That's all about the summary. And the next material or the next duty I have here is some question about the drama. The first question is, where does Mr. Stevenson suddenly go away on a business trip? The answer is Boston. The second question, what does Mrs. Stevenson overhear on the phone when trying to contact her husband? The answer is murder. The third question, in what city does the play take place? In New York. The last question, what is the primary motivation for Mrs. Stevenson's killer? The answer is neurotic and invalid state. Okay, thank you very much for your nice attention. I'm sorry if I have many mistakes in my presentation. That's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.